Hey guys, Coach Kayla just coming to you today with a video about judging and doing more of a briefing on that. If you have never judged a DEKA event before, you have no idea what you're doing, or you just need to brush up on some of those skills and information, I'm here to share that as it relates to our DEKA event this weekend. So thank you so much for volunteering your time. It is such a big deal to us to not only have you at our event, but to have you volunteer your time to help everyone get through and not only just be able to race, but have a wonderful race experience. With that being said, let's go ahead and talk about judging in general. If you have never done a DEKA mile before, or if you are unfamiliar with the race, the DEKA mile essentially is 160 meters of running in between functional fitness zones. So within DEKA, there's 10 functional fitness zones. They are going to start off on a 160 meter run. They're going to do zone 1. Then they'll go back on the run for 160 meters. Then they'll do zone 2. And they'll go all the way back and forth until they finish the final 10th station ram burpees. So essentially, their time is from when they leave the starting time for their very first run to when they set down the ram from their 20th burpee. So if you're thinking about how am I timing these people, it's from those 2 points. If you guys are not super familiar with the DEKA zones and what the exact movement standards are for those zones, I'm going to link a separate video that goes a little bit more in depth into those. And what I want to do right now is talk about the intricacies of our course as it relates to your job as a judge, and then some of the common offenders that I will typically see rules and movement standards wise as it relates to each of the zones. The first thing is that our race course is going to require a 2-lap run in order to meet the 160 meters. With that being said, you might have some racers that are a little nervous about what if I forget what lap that I'm on. As a judge, I'm hoping that you could help them count, okay? I think it's going to be a little bit more simple than some people are realizing because it's not going to be a super long lap to begin with. But at the end of the day, if you can just be prepared to help them count, that is going to be a huge help to them. Again, they're going to start at the starting line. They're going to go around for 2 laps, and then they're going to enter zone 1. So once they leave zone 1, they're going to run. They're going to pass zone 2, which should be the row, right? They're going to pass it once, and on the second time around, when they see it for the second time, they should go into it, okay? So you always leave the zone, you pass the zone that you're going into next, you go back around, and then you go in on the second time, if that makes sense. So if you can just help your athletes do that, that'd be great. If you yourself get lost in what lap they're on, I can tell you this, for any of the individuals, if you maybe saw them like 15, 20 seconds ago, they probably only ran 1 lap, okay? A 30-second split for 160 meters is pretty dang fast, okay? You usually don't see those until you get to the teams division. So if you feel like you just saw them, they probably didn't run both laps, and I would recommend that they go back out for another run before they come back in to complete that station. I will have signs at every single zone so that you not only know what zone you're in, but what the rep count is. A lot of numbers, a lot of different things to try and keep track of. So I make it easy by putting signs on the floor so that way you can look there and see exactly how many reps they need to do of that specific zone. If you are one of those people that are like, whoa, I get lost in my count on the way to 30, that's the highest you'll count in this race, no worries. I've got little rep counters that you can do, that you can use for that specific purpose. And I will also have stopwatches as well too. If you do not want to use your phone, you can use one or the other, or in fact, you can use both. I've had a nightmare situation where the stopwatch magically stopped by itself, and then that person got done with the race, and I had to kind of guess what their time was based off of when they started and right around when they finished. You don't want to put yourself in that situation, trust me. So having a backup stopwatch or timer of some sort could be really, really helpful. So let's start with zone number 1, which is the ram reverse lunges. The ram is going to be sitting there on the floor. They need to pick it up. And once they get it racked on their body, it could be a back rack, it could be a shoulder rack, right? Somewhere on their body, they need to step behind themselves. They need to touch a knee down to the ground, and then both feet need to step back up to the starting line, okay? Now, with that being said, as people are starting to get tired in the middle of this zone, you are going to notice that their form is going to start to weaken. They're going to start to fall forward a little bit. They're not going to be straightening out their knees or coming to a full lockout. And that's where we need to remind them to stand straight up. That's the cue that I give them. It typically fixes it. If not, you can refer to their knees saying, hey, can you lock out your knees a little bit more for me? It is totally fine if they slunch over like on the way down and they use their hand to push off of their knee. But when they get up to the top, those knees need to be straight and they need to be upright. Otherwise, that is not a good rep. Another really important thing about the lunges is because they are holding an implement, they are going to have to set that down before they go back out for their run. What we don't want to have happen is people throw the implement on the floor. These are rubber, they bounce, it can get nasty. Someone has gotten hurt before because someone threw a ram on the floor. So it is a rule that they must set it down, and if they throw it down, then not only do they get no reps, they have to pick back up the ram, they have to do that final rep, and then they have to set it down correctly before they can move on in their race. So just keep that in mind. The next zone is going to be the row erg. So this one's pretty simple. It's actually right behind me here. They can set the damper setting to whatever they want, their feet setting. It's really hard to mess up the station. The only thing that we need to look for here is that they hit that 500 meters and they cannot actually stand up from the machine until that 500 meters has been reached. And that is going to be the same exact standard that's withheld both on the ski erg. They cannot step off the platform until it reaches 500. And then same with the assault bike. Once it reaches 25 cals, then they can remove themselves from the bike. Now they can like let go of the handles. They can, start to remove their feet from the straps. They can get ready, but they are not allowed to either physically stand up or move from the platform until those specific meters or calories have been met. Moving on to the box step overs, I would recommend going to that movement standards video that I'm gonna link and just watching that in full because they're gonna give more detail here. Really what we're looking for is that they're standing with both feet on one side of the box, that both feet travel to the top of the box, and then they travel to the other side of the box in order to complete one rep. A question I get all the time is, do both feet have to hit at the absolute same time at the top of the box? They do not. It can be one foot, then they can switch the other foot to hit it on top of the box, and then they just need to make sure they step on the other side. That is it, right? As long as both feet touch it before they get to the other side, and then start their next rep, then that is considered a good rep. As far as the hand usage goes, being able to use hands on the knees to help them step up. If they need to just kind of place their hand down as they're getting off the box, that's totally fine. We just want to make sure that they're not vaulting up and over the box. So like putting both hands down and then like basically putting pressure into the box and like vaulting up and over it, that is not allowed and that will not be considered a rep. Moving on to the med ball sit-ups. This station is pretty simple. The ball just needs to go back behind their head, actually touch the ground. And then the part that people miss is that the ball needs to go in between their feet, not in between their legs, like, right around where their groin area is. They need to actually reach up and put their ball in between their heels, like their actual feet. A lot of people cheat this station and they cheat the distance on that. Now, I've been asked questions on how far do the shoulders need to come off. As long as you can see that the shoulders do in fact come up off the ground and you're not having someone with super long arms just basically going like this, forwards and backwards, then it's a good rep, right? But the big thing that you can look for, and this will typically handle the problem of are they getting their shoulders enough off the ground, is that they get that ball in between their feet. With the farmer's carry, this one's pretty simple. They can only travel the weights with their hands, okay? So it cannot be racked up on the shoulders. There can't be any funny business with the weights. They have to be holding them in their hands. When they go down, they need to step past the line with both feet and then return to the line that they came from, also stepping past that line. That'll happen 5 times down and back. What you want to look for is when they're coming back to finish up their 5th lap is that they are not just putting the weights over the line. This happens a lot. They need to step past the line with both feet, then they can place their weights down. Now, if an athlete happens to throw the weights across the line in any way, shape, or form, that is a no-go. If that happens, you're going to call the athlete back. You're going to make them pick up the weights themselves and then show proper placement down on the ground. So moving on to the tank push-pull. Again, this one's pretty simple. They're going to push their way down and then they're going to pull the tank right back, and they do that 5 times. Now, the biggest thing that you are looking for as a judge is the back wheels. All you need to do is keep an eye on those back wheels of the tank. They're going to push the tank all the way down to the line, okay? Their back wheels need to go past the line completely on the way down. On the pole, They need to pull the back wheels all the way to the line that they started at. It just needs to make contact with it, and that would be considered a good rep. Now, moving on to the ramp burpees, this is the last station. People are tired. A lot of people make some mistakes here, so we need to make sure that they finish this station out strong and correctly. When it comes to the burpees, there are a couple checkpoints to look for. You want to make sure that their chest actually hits the ram on the way down, okay? What I'm going to also include here is that their hips need to be down as well. So we've seen people do push-ups before, and we've seen people that have done modified push-ups where their butt is hiked all the way up towards the ceiling. That is not allowed, okay? If their hips are in line with their shoulders, like on the way down towards the ram, that is not good. We need their hips to go down towards the ground. On the way up, they can step it up, they can jump it up. That's totally up to them. They need to press all the way above their head, not in front, all the way above their head, and they need to lock out those elbows, okay? That is the biggest one that you're going to see, is that some people will come like here and then start to go back down. The last thing to look for in the burpees is, in order for them to end their time, they must set the ram back down on the floor. It could be back in a vertical position. It could be in a horizontal position. It just needs to be set back down. It cannot be thrown down. At that point, once they set it down, you can stop your time, and that is the end of their run. I know that's a lot, and it might sound somewhat overwhelming, and the hardest thing to do is probably to say, hey, that is a no rep, right? No reps are really hard to dill out. I totally understand that. Here is the best way that you can do this. Let's say that you are judging the ram lunges, and you've asked them to stand up, you've asked them to lock out their knees, and it's been 1 to 2 reps, and they're still not making the correction that you're asking for. Let's say they're on rep 20. You're going to say 20, 20, 20, until they finally be like, oh, wow, I'm not actually advancing towards 30. I should probably fix my form. That's the best way to do this. And if they get upset and they ask you why, then you say, I need you to stand up all the way. I need you to lock out your knees, whatever it is that they're not actually doing, okay? Now, if anyone ever gives you so much grief in any of the stations, I will be there. I will be floating up and down the race course as best as I can. You can wave at me and flag me over, and I will handle the situation. That is not your job to handle an angry or mean athlete, but typically 9 times out of 10, these people are really nice and excited to be there. So I don't want to set that precedent that you're going to get that athlete. Just in the instance that you do, that's the best way to handle it. At the very beginning of the race, the athlete's going to hand you a scorecard. That scorecard is going to have all of their racer information on it, and it's going to have a DEKA mark time at the top right corner. All you need to do as the judge is hold on to that throughout the entirety of their race. And when you're done and you get their final time, write their DEKA mark score in that top right corner. And then you are going to be responsible for holding on to that slip and turning it into the finisher's table, where all the shirts and the medals and the photos will be happening, just to make sure that we obviously get them collected all together for input, okay? At that point, I'm also going to ask you to, again, this is part of making their experience great, get them a finisher's medal, get them a finisher's t-shirt, give that to them, celebrate them. And then at that point, I'll probably be close to needing you back to the start line so that I can send you off with another person. Something else to note is that there's going to be some athletes that want to set up their lane ahead of time, and that is totally fine. What they mean by that is essentially they want to make sure that their row erg is set up to the right settings, their ski erg is set to the right settings, that they have the right weights ready to go. That is totally fine. I will release them and allow them to go and do that when it's time. But typically I will only allow for them to do that up until the ski erg. So what that means is that we need to make sure that they have the correct farmer carry weights, that they have the correct bike seat setting, and that all of the other things like the ball is the right weight, the tank is the right weight, and that we have their ram waiting out for their burpees. All of that stuff is going to be pretty simple to set up. I'm going to, again, be floating and going up and down, making sure that those things are set ahead of time. But what I recommend that you do as the judge is you write down what their seat setting is for the bike and any other preferences that they have throughout the race. The station I'm going to need the most help with is going to be the tank and making sure that they are at the right resistance level. Men should be all the way down on an 8. Women will be 1 tick up at a 7. And then the only changes there is that any of our master's division, which we will have 1 woman going through as the master's division this weekend, will be set at a 5. Only thing that gets a little bit tricky is what setting you're using for the co-ed team races. This was a change that was made last year where you were not allowed to switch between the 7 and 8 resistance level, that now every single person doing a co-ed must push and pull the tank at an 8 resistance level. So just make sure that if you're judging a co-ed team, that it never leaves that 8 setting. It should always stay there. At the end of the day, guys, just ask each of your racers before they go, what do you need from me? How can I best support you? Are there any special requests that you have? You'll typically get all the information that you need from that. Thank you guys so much for providing your time to help us out this weekend. Let me know if you have any questions at all, and I will see you guys all soon.